This show is part of OnePlace, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Welcome to our daily roundup. We're diving into today's most significant legal and criminal justice stories, providing the context you need to stay informed on the cases shaping our communities and courts.
Lawyers question bullet evidence in the Charlie Kirk case.
A jealous ex-boyfriend allegedly murders a Connecticut firefighter.
A Nevada man is sentenced for suffocating his niece.
An Arizona woman survives a brutal stabbing after crashing.
A Texas man allegedly killed his missing girlfriend.
A judge denies splitting Lindsay Clancy's murder trial.
A California man faces charges for 3 separate murders.
Indiana parents face charges for a toddler's catastrophic injuries.
An Ohio woman is sentenced for a party shooting.
A Texas father lures and kills his young daughter.
Starting in Utah today, in Provo, Utah, the legal team for Tyler Robinson, the man accused of assassinating conservative activist Charlie Kirk, is raising serious questions about the forensic evidence. They've requested a delay for a preliminary hearing originally set for May, citing a massive amount of discovery material to review. Specifically, they point to an ATF analysis that failed to conclusively link a bullet fragment from the autopsy to the rifle found near the scene. This gap in the ballistics report is a major point of contention as the FBI continues to run more specialized tests on the lead composition.
The defense is clearly looking to exploit these forensic uncertainties to clear Robinson before the case even reaches a full trial. While the ATF report remains private, snippets suggest the microscopic markings on the fragments weren't distinct enough for a definitive match. However, prosecutors aren't backing down, noting that Robinson's DNA was found on the rifle's trigger and several cartridges. They are still intending to seek the death penalty for the September shooting on the Utah Valley University campus. Robinson allegedly targeted Kirk due to political grievances, but the upcoming April hearing will focus on courtroom logistics like camera bans.
Moving to Connecticut now. A tragic scene unfolded in Stratford, Connecticut, where a well-respected firefighter was allegedly murdered by his girlfriend's jealous ex-boyfriend. Terrence Kramer, a 10-year veteran of the Bridgeport Fire Department, was found with a fatal gunshot wound after Jabari Bush reportedly broke into the home. According to the arrest affidavit, the woman was asleep with Kramer when she was startled awake by Bush standing in her bedroom. He reportedly shouted about her being with another man before punching her and opening fire. Kramer managed to yell that he had been shot before police arrived to find him in a pool of blood.
The investigation revealed a disturbing pattern of harassment leading up to the violence. The woman had ended her 5-year relationship with Bush months earlier, but he allegedly continued to stalk her, calling incessantly and even showing up at her workplace to yell at her. Ring doorbell footage from the night of the murder clearly identified Bush at the door before he entered through an unlocked entrance. He was captured after a brief vehicle pursuit and now faces charges of murder and home invasion. The Bridgeport Fire Department is mourning Kramer, describing him as a dedicated public servant who served with honor for nearly a decade.
Next, a Nevada sentencing. In Nevada, Leoulo Teveseo has been sentenced to 10 to 25 years in prison for the second-degree murder of his 2-year-old niece, Fofogafeta Maluya Fields. The incident occurred in April 2024 while Teveseo was babysitting. When police arrived at the North Las Vegas apartment, they found the toddler unresponsive on a dining room table. Teveseo initially tried to claim the girl had simply collapsed or fallen while her mother was at the DMV. However, his story shifted multiple times during police interrogations, eventually revealing a much darker truth about what happened in that home while the child was under his care.
The investigation ultimately determined that Teveseo suffocated the child with his bare hands. He admitted to holding her like a baby and keeping his hand over her mouth until she was struggling to breathe. This horrific admission contradicted his earlier claims of performing CPR or the child being sick. Judge Tiara Jones accepted the plea deal last week, ensuring Teveseo will spend at least a decade behind bars. It's a devastating conclusion for the family, who lost a young child to a person they trusted. The case highlights the tragic reality of child abuse that can occur even within close-knit family structures.
Now to Arizona. An Arizona woman is lucky to be alive after a minor traffic collision turned into a nightmare. After pulling over into a Burger King parking lot to exchange insurance information, she was attacked by the other driver, 30-year-old Joseph Sellers. Police say Sellers stabbed the woman 19 times and beat her severely without any provocation. He later told investigators he believed he was being gang-stalked and reacted violently when the victim reached into her purse, assuming she was grabbing a weapon. The victim suffered a collapsed lung and significant facial disfigurement, but she managed to use her smartwatch to call for help after Sellers stole her phone.
Sellers fled to Las Vegas after the attack, where he was eventually apprehended. When police found him, he was still driving the same vehicle, though he had attempted to disguise it by painting the rims a different color. Inside the car, investigators found the victim's phone and several box cutters. Sellers admitted his intent was to harm her, even though he acknowledged she was likely just looking for her insurance papers. He now faces charges of attempted second-degree murder. This case is a terrifying reminder of how quickly a routine interaction can escalate when mental instability and paranoia are involved in a roadside dispute.
Shifting to Texas. In Little Elm, Texas, Christopher Charles Sanders is facing murder charges following the disappearance of his girlfriend, Molly Richards. Molly was last seen in November, and her father became increasingly worried when Sanders stopped responding to his messages. Sanders allegedly told people that Molly had decided to stay with another man she met in South Dakota, but investigators found no evidence of this. Instead, they discovered Molly's car in South Dakota smelling strongly of cleaning products. Back in Texas, a woman watching Sanders' dogs found Molly's driver's license and other personal items at his home, which directly contradicted his story that she had moved away to start a new life.
The timeline of the case is particularly chilling, as Molly had previously told her father that Sanders was abusive. She even sent a text about checking into a mental health facility just before she vanished, which police now suspect may have been sent by Sanders himself. Cell phone pings eventually placed her phone near Sanders' home, long after he claimed she was in South Dakota. Sanders also reportedly purchased a bow saw around the time of her disappearance, adding a gruesome layer to the investigation. While Molly's body has not been recovered, the mounting physical and circumstantial evidence led authorities to file formal murder charges this week.
Next, in Massachusetts. A judge in Massachusetts has denied a request from Lindsay Clancy's defense team to split her upcoming murder trial into two separate phases. Clancy is accused of killing her 3 young children in their Duxbury home before attempting to take her own life. Her lawyer wanted the first phase to focus solely on whether she committed the acts, and the second phase to determine her criminal responsibility, specifically regarding her mental state. However, Judge William Sullivan ruled that dividing the evidence would be nearly impossible and inefficient. He noted that the same witnesses and experts would likely need to testify in both phases, which wouldn't serve the interests of judicial economy.
The defense has long maintained that Clancy was suffering from severe postpartum psychosis at the time of the tragedy. They were concerned that statements she made to court psychiatrists could be used against her if the trial wasn't bifurcated. The judge clarified that those statements will only be admissible as rebuttal evidence once the defense officially raises the issue of her mental health. Clancy remains hospitalized and is scheduled for another psychiatric evaluation next month. With the trial set to begin in July, this ruling means the jury will hear all the evidence regarding the crimes and her mental state in one continuous proceeding, which is a significant procedural win for the prosecution.
Back to California. Howard Wang, a 44-year-old California man, is now facing a third murder charge in a complex case involving a hired hit and a double homicide. Prosecutors say Wang hired a hitman to kill his mistress's ex-boyfriend, Cheng-Li Lee, in San Gabriel back in June 2024. Wang allegedly acted as the getaway driver while the hired killer, an alleged gang member, carried out the shooting. This revelation comes while Wang was already in custody for the brutal September 2025 slayings of his own wife, Lim Lin Guo, and his mother-in-law. In that case, Wang allegedly slit their throats and then tried to blame the attack on a fictional intruder he claimed to have shot at.
The details of the domestic murders are horrifying, especially since another adult and 2 children were in the home at the time. Wang's mistress, Yan Wang, has also been arrested and charged with helping him avoid capture, and destroying evidence. She reportedly broke into Wang's home the day after the murders to commit larceny and hide cell phones. Prosecutors are now linking all 3 deaths to Wang's volatile personal life and his attempts to eliminate anyone he perceived as an obstacle. With the planning of the first murder occurring in Contra Costa County, he will face trial there for all the charges, with his next court appearance scheduled for mid-April.
Now to Indiana. In a heartbreaking case out of Indiana, a mother and her boyfriend are charged with the near-fatal neglect of a 3-year-old girl. Kami Nelson and Leo Donald Jr. were staying at an Airbnb when they called 911 for an unresponsive child. First responders found the toddler naked, not breathing, and covered in bruises from head to toe. The injuries were so severe that the girl required emergency surgery for intestinal tears and is now on dialysis for acute kidney failure. The couple tried to claim the child's injuries were the result of sleepwalking into door handles, but medical experts quickly debunked that story, stating the trauma was consistent with deliberate physical abuse.
The medical report described the girl as being in shock and critically ill upon arrival at the hospital. Doctors noted that no medical condition could spontaneously cause the kind of internal bleeding and lacerations she suffered. The sheer extent of the soft tissue damage and abdominal trauma pointed directly to a violent assault rather than an accident. Both Nelson and O'Donnell faced charges of neglect of a dependent, resulting in catastrophic injury. As the child remains in critical condition with a guarded prognosis, the community is left reeling from the brutality of the allegations. The investigation is ongoing, as authorities look deeper into the couple's history and the events leading up to that morning.
Moving to Ohio. An Ohio woman, Olivia Clendenin, has been sentenced to at least 16 years in prison after a New Year's Eve party turned into a shooting gallery. Clendenin arrived at the party armed with a handgun after discovering that both her husband and her boyfriend were there together. The 2 men had apparently just found out about each other earlier that evening. When Clendenin couldn't convince her husband to leave, she opened fire, discharging 8 shots into the home. She didn't hit either of her romantic interests, but she did strike an innocent partygoer, Daniel Johnson, who was simply sitting on the porch minding his own business.
Johnson spoke at the sentencing, describing how his life was permanently altered by a conflict he had nothing to do with. He was caught in a barrage of gunfire intended for someone else and nearly lost his life. Clendenin was found guilty of attempted murder and felonious assault. During the hearing, she expressed regret and wished Johnson well, but the judge emphasized the extreme danger she posed to the public. The prosecutor noted that while she started the year as a free woman, her actions ensured she would spend the next decade and a half behind bars. It's a stark example of how domestic disputes can spill over and harm innocent bystanders.
Finally, in Texas, a devastating incident in Haltom City, Texas, has left the community in mourning after a father killed his 6-year-old daughter and her mother in a planned ambush. John Bouyi allegedly lured Raisa Tatuquila and their daughter Nathi to a stadium parking lot under the pretense of giving them money. Instead, he arrived in a U-Haul truck and opened fire on their vehicle before killing himself. Police described the attack as premeditated and targeted, stemming from a bitter custody dispute. Bouyi had reportedly been experiencing personal distress following the death of his own father, but investigators concluded that the killings were a deliberate act of violence rather than a spontaneous breakdown.
The loss of young Nathi, a kindergarten student, has hit the local school district particularly hard. Her principal described the tragedy as a heartbreak for the entire community, and grief counselors have been made available for students and staff. The investigation revealed that Bouyi harbored significant grievances toward Tatuquila, and the use of a rented truck suggested he had carefully planned the logistics of the ambush. This case underscores the lethal potential of domestic disputes and the tragic toll they take on the most vulnerable. It's a somber reminder of the need for intervention in high-conflict custody cases before they escalate to such a violent and final conclusion.
That wraps up our briefing for today. Thank you for joining us as we navigate these complex stories. We'll be back tomorrow with more updates on the cases you're following.